When I got married, I told neither my husband nor my mother-in-law that the house we lived in belonged to me. And honestly, it was good that I did it that way, because right after the wedding— Wait, before I continue with the story, how often do you hear stories like this? Have you already subscribed to the channel and left a like? I wish you a nice day listening. He entered my life at that exact moment. I had sworn to focus only on my career. Then came David, the new head of the sales department, tall, with brown eyes and a smile so warm, it seemed like it was just for me. I worked as a senior key account manager, so we often had to talk about business topics. One day he said to me, "Veronica, you have an incredible talent for dealing with clients." And then he suggested, "How about we talk about a new strategy over dinner?" I agreed, although I usually avoided such situations. That was 6 years ago. I had just turned 28 and had finally bought my own house, small but cozy, in a quiet neighborhood of the city. It had taken an incredible amount of effort to get it. I had saved every penny for years. I literally denied myself everything, even took on extra projects. And when I finally held the keys in my hands, I swore to myself that this was just the beginning of an independent life. This dinner with David stretched late into the night. We talked about everything except work. He told me about his travels, his goals, his dreams, and I caught myself thinking that I hadn't spoken with someone so interesting in a long time. "Where do you live?" he asked as he walked me home. I hesitated a little. I don't know why, but I didn't want to immediately show him my house, this place that meant so much to me. "I'm renting a small apartment near downtown," I lied, without thinking about why I was doing it. He just made a face and said that he was living with his mother for the time being. He had just returned from abroad and didn't have his own apartment yet, but that it was only temporary. Our relationship developed quickly. David was attentive. He always had nice gestures, gifts, compliments. It seemed as if he guessed exactly what I wanted. It was almost magical, as if someone had told him my wishes. The first time he stayed overnight at my place, David walked through the house, looking carefully at every corner. "Your house is very nice. It feels very cozy," he remarked. Surely it wasn't expensive. And again, I lied without thinking much. "It belongs to my grandmother. She's currently living with her sister in another city and let me stay here for a while." He only replied, "What luck you have with your grandmother," and then ran his hand over one of the walls, as if he were analyzing something. "Houses like this are incredibly expensive nowadays," he said. For some reason, something in his gaze made me a little suspicious, but I chose to ignore it. 2 weeks later, he introduced me to his mother, Elena Becker, an imposing woman around 60 with a stern look and the manners of a school principal. She looked me up and down as if she were evaluating a product and then gave me a forced smile. "Finally, my Dave brings home a girl who suits him," she said, half serious, half joking. The dinner was uncomfortable. The atmosphere was strange. She bombarded me with questions about my work, my family, and my future plans. She seemed particularly interested in my family situation. "So you only have a grandmother left. And where does she live?" she asked. I answered as best I could, trying not to reveal too many details, because her gaze made me very nervous. After dinner, when David went out for a smoke, she took me by the arm and said in a sweet but calculating tone, "Veronica, one can tell you're a good girl." Exactly what David needs. Someone simple, who knows how to save and has a future. "I am very happy for you." I don't know. Something about her words didn't sound sincere, but I couldn't identify exactly what it was. When David came back and noticed I was acting strange, he said, "Don't listen to her, she just worries about me. Ever since my parents got divorced, she raised me alone. She took care of everything." "And since when were they divorced?" I asked. "Since I was 5 years old. My father left us and went to another country. We never heard from him again." I just nodded sympathetically, although it sounded like a very common, repeated story, almost as if he had already rehearsed it. Despite this, David's feelings seemed sincere, and little by little, I let go of my doubts. 3 months later, he proposed to me. We were in the same restaurant where we had our first date, and suddenly he knelt down. "Veronica, you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Will you marry me?" And he showed me a ring with a small diamond that sparkled in the candlelight. My heart began to beat violently. 1,000 thoughts shot through my head, but I said yes anyway. From that moment on, the wedding preparations became a spectacle. Elena Becker, David's mother, wanted to control absolutely everything, from the color of the flowers to the guest list. David adopted a very strange attitude. He seemed to be on my side, but in important moments, he always sided with his mother. "My mother won't give you bad advice," he told me. "She has organized dozens of weddings for her former students." It turned out that according to him, Elena Becker had been a school principal until she retired. "She's a born administrator," he said proudly. "Her school was always the best in the city." Something seemed strange to me, so I decided to check. I looked up the school where she had allegedly worked. I called and asked for Elena Becker. The secretary replied in surprise, "There was never a principal here with that name. Maybe you mean Galina Smith. She was the principal, but that was about 10 years ago." This little lie made me see my future mother-in-law in a different light. What else had she made up? And why was David supporting her in it? One day, as we were preparing the invitations, I asked him about the relatives he wanted to invite. "And your family?" "Who should we invite?" "Everyone except your mother," David said thoughtfully. "Well, I don't have much family, just a few cousins on my mother's side. The others live far away. I don't think they can come. And friends, schoolmates, colleagues. Honestly, I don't like big parties. I just want the closest ones. But you should invite your whole family, especially your grandmother," he said. Again, the topic of my grandmother, the owner of the house, came up. It came up more and more often, as if it were no coincidence. Both David and his mother began to talk a lot about my grandmother. How she was doing, how old she was, whether she wasn't becoming forgetful, how she managed to live alone. I stuck to my false story, feeling like this lie was developing a life of its own. I don't know why, but I had the feeling that I shouldn't tell the truth about the house. It wasn't that I didn't trust David. It was more of a gut feeling, an inner voice that told me, "Keep your trump card to yourself." A week before the wedding, I accidentally overheard a conversation between David and Elena Becker. That day I came home early as usual. When I opened the door with my key, I heard voices from the kitchen. "Mom, don't start," David said. "We're getting married soon, and time doesn't wait, my son," Elena Becker replied dryly. The grandmother could come back at any time or do something. "Are the papers ready yet?" "Yes, Mr. Karpov took care of everything. Only a signature is missing." "Then act as soon as the wedding is over. Don't hesitate like last time." "Do you remember how it all ended?" I froze. Fear suddenly overcame me and I couldn't move. What were they talking about? What was the last time? My heart was pounding so hard that I felt like they could hear it from the kitchen. "Last time was different," David grumbled. "That was an apartment. This is a whole house, and Veronica isn't that stupid. They all seem ready. Until they fall in love." Elena Becker laughed softly. "Do you think you can manage it?" she asked. "You're doing it well, honestly." In that moment, I tiptoed to the entrance and slammed the door, as if I had just arrived. "I'm home," I called out in the most normal voice I could muster. David stuck his head out of the kitchen and smiled at me calmly. "My mother brought some salads for tomorrow. You're home early today." "A meeting was canceled," I replied, entering the kitchen with a forced smile. I greeted Elena Becker, who was sitting at the table. She had several papers that she quickly stuffed into her bag when she saw me. "Veronica, you look very pale," she said, feigning concern. "Are you not feeling well?" "Just tired." "It's been stressful days at work," I replied, trying to sound relaxed. "And don't worry, soon you'll have time to rest," she said, smiling. "After the wedding, you'll go on your honeymoon, and then you'll live peacefully in this beautiful house. By the way, isn't your grandmother coming to the wedding?" In that moment, she and her son exchanged a glance, and right then I understood that my intuition was not deceiving me. There was something very dirty about this whole thing. Very dirty. Despite what I heard, I didn't call off the wedding. Partly because I didn't want to believe that David was involved in anything bad, and partly because I had to know what would happen next. I had always been a bit daring. Maybe that's why I lived alone. I was never afraid to take risks, neither in business nor in life. I always knew how to make difficult decisions. The wedding was simple. We signed the marriage certificate at City Hall, and then had a small dinner with close friends and a few relatives. Unfortunately, my real grandmother couldn't come from her city. At 82 years old, the journey was already difficult for her. Elena Becker was charming to my parents. She didn't stop praising them and telling them how lucky they must be to have raised such a wonderful daughter. "What a shame your mother couldn't come," she said to my mother. "Veronica always speaks so lovingly about her and about her house, which is supposedly beautiful." My mother looked at her, confused. "Excuse me, I think you're confusing something. My mother lives in a studio apartment." For a moment, Elena Becker froze, but she reacted quickly. "Oh, I'm sorry. I must have gotten mixed up with all the information for the wedding." After that, my mother-in-law didn't approach my parents as much. I was able to discreetly explain to my mother that it had been a misunderstanding, but from the look Elena Becker gave me, I knew she had already noticed that I was hiding something. We didn't go on a honeymoon, supposedly because of David's work commitments. Instead, he moved in with me, and so our married life began. The first few days were very good. David was attentive, helped with the household, even made me breakfast. But little by little, everything changed. He started staying later at work, came home tired and barely spoke. His mother called him several times a day, and when they spoke, they did so quietly, as if they didn't want me to hear. One evening, David came home with a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. "I want to celebrate our 15 days of marriage," he said with a smile, giving me a kiss. "And besides, there's something important I want to talk to you about." We had dinner, drank wine, and just when I thought the topic wouldn't come up, there was a knock at the door. It was Elena Becker, standing in the entryway with a cake in her hands. "I'm not going to intrude on the family," she said with that smile, which I didn't know if it was friendly or calculating. That afternoon, Elena Becker came by without warning. "I didn't want to wait for an invitation," she said, walking in. "I just wanted to see how you two are doing." She exchanged a glance with David, and in that moment, I knew this spontaneous visit was actually already planned. "We were just about to talk about the future," David said, looking at his mother. "About our future." "Good idea," Elena replied, sitting down in a chair and starting to scan everything, as if she were evaluating the place. "A young family needs to have clear plans." I served the tea and tried not to show my nervousness. Something inside me told me that this evening would be very important. "My mother and I were talking," David began, putting an arm around my shoulders. "We were thinking about our future." "I'm listening," I said, taking a sip of tea, trying to seem calm. "Look, Veronica," David said gently, "we need to think about what's coming. The career, the kids, our future as a couple." "Exactly," Elena Becker interrupted, shaking her head so hard her earrings trembled. "A young family must build solid foundations. Stability, my dear, that's the most important thing." "I agree," I replied cautiously. "But what exactly do you mean?" "David needs to advance in his career," his mother said, very convinced. "His potential is much greater than his current position. I spoke with an old friend," she continued. "He has a construction company and is willing to offer Dave a position as a commercial director." I turned to David in surprise. "You're changing jobs? And why didn't you tell me anything?" "I wanted to surprise you," he said, lowering his gaze a little. "First, I wanted to make sure everything was all right. The salary there is twice as high." "And what about our company?" I asked. "You and I work together. We have projects together. You keep doing your thing," he said, giving me a quick kiss. "I'll be able to provide for us even better now." I started to feel that something was wrong. David had never said he was unhappy with his job, and besides, he had no experience in the construction sector. "And when would you start?" I asked him. "In 2 weeks," he replied, without looking me in the eyes. "It's all arranged, all decided without me," I said, feeling something tighten in my chest. "I just wanted to bring you the good news," Elena Becker interrupted, seeing I wasn't happy. "Veronica, you have to support your husband. This is a big step for you as a family. Besides," she smiled knowingly, "you'll need more money soon." "Why do you say that?" I asked, looking at her. She just turned to her son, as if wanting to say something without saying it directly. "Children cost money, Veronica, and it's time you thought about having one." I felt myself turn red with anger. David and I had never seriously talked about children. Yes, I liked the idea of being a mother someday, but not now, just when my career was really taking off. We haven't planned for children yet, I said firmly. At least not in the near future. Elena Becker's face changed instantly. It became hard, as if I had said something terrible. You haven't planned for it? She looked at David. Why didn't you tell me anything? David seemed confused, shifting his gaze between her and me. We haven't really talked about it yet, he replied. And what do you need to talk about? His mother interrupted curtly. Children should come while you're young. And you, Veronica, you're not 20 anymore, are you? I am, I replied, trying to stay calm. And I want to focus on my career first. Career, Elena laughed mockingly. A career won't keep you warm when you're old, but children, grandchildren, that's what matters. David tried to calm her down. Mom, there's still time for everything. Time doesn't wait, she said angrily, setting her cup on the table so loudly that the tea spilled. But I see we won't reach an agreement today. I'm leaving. It's already late. When the door closed behind her, I felt like I could finally breathe again. David looked at me guiltily. Forgive my mother, he said. She's just worried about our future. About our future or yours? I asked, clearing the table. What do you mean? Nothing, I said. Just that it's strange that you're talking about my pregnancy without me. He came closer and hugged me from behind, burying his face in my hair. I love you and I want a family with you. A normal, complete family. That's not the strange part, I said. The strange part is that you didn't ask my opinion about the new job, or about the children. And this is our life as a couple. David wanted the best for both of us. I had heard that sentence before. He wanted the best, as if it were an excuse for everything. The next few days seemed normal on the outside. David was loving, cooked, didn't mention the topic of children anymore, but something had changed. I started to notice him making quiet calls from the balcony, or quickly hiding papers as soon as I entered the room. One night, while searching for things in the closet, I found a strange folder. Inside were documents, purchase agreements, deeds, wills. On several, David's name appeared as the beneficiary of properties. There were also photos of middle-aged women, some with notes on the back. Galina Smith, apartment on Lenox Avenue. Vera Miller, house outside the city. A shiver ran down my back. What was this? Did David have a plan with properties, or worse, with single women who owned properties? Suddenly I heard the key in the door. I barely had time to put the folder back in its place. David entered the room with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Flowers. Hello, my love. I wanted to surprise you, he said with a smile. I took the flowers and tried to smile too. Thank you. They are very beautiful. I was talking with my colleagues at work. Tomorrow we're having a small farewell gathering for my job change. You're coming, right? Yes, of course, I replied, though I was still thinking about the hidden folder in the closet. And who all is coming? The whole team. I'll take the opportunity to introduce you to them more properly. It struck me as strange. We had been working at the same company for over a year. David had never shown interest in introducing me to anyone. When we started dating, we preferred to keep the relationship secret at work, and now suddenly a party. The next day, I arrived late to work and also to the restaurant. David was already there, sitting at a large table surrounded by about 10 people, chatting animatedly. And here is my beautiful wife, he said, standing up and drawing everyone's attention. I'd like to introduce you to Veronica. I greeted everyone, but something seemed strange. I didn't know anyone who was there. None of them were from our company. Dave? And where are the others? I asked him as soon as we sat down. They couldn't come, he replied without giving it much importance. But these are my closest friends. This unsettled me. He had never told me about any of them. Next to me sat a plump woman around 50, who introduced herself as Margaret Lehman. Very pleased to meet you, Dave's wife. I've heard so much about you. Really? I asked, somewhat confused. And how do you know David? Oh, we're old friends of his mother's. I worked at the school where she taught. I frowned. As far as I knew, Elena Becker had always been the principal. Well, she said hesitantly, first she taught, then she became the principal. And how long have you known David? For about a year since he started working with us. With you? Where? I asked her. At Victor's, she said, pointing to a middle-aged man on the other side of the table. While I was trying to understand all this, David tapped his glass with his fork to get attention. Friends, I want to toast to this new chapter in life, to my new job, and above all to my beautiful wife, who makes me happy every day. Everyone applauded, and I sat there feeling like the floor was swaying beneath me. Who were all these people? And who was the man I had married? Really? After dinner, in the taxi on the way home, I couldn't take it anymore. Who were all those people? Dave, you said it was a party with colleagues from work. And I didn't say, colleagues, I said friends, he replied, looking out the window. And who is this Victor? An old acquaintance. My mother asked him to come. What does it matter, Veronica? It's not about the party, Dave. The problem is that you've been hiding a lot of things lately. Strange calls, hidden documents, and now this. People I've never seen in my life. I heard you, he said, laughing, but in a somewhat forced way. Are you spying on me or what? What documents? What calls? What are you talking about? Don't you find all this strange, Dave? I do. What's going on? Nothing is going on, he replied, taking my hand. You're just tired. You've been working a lot lately. Maybe you should take a vacation, rest a bit. I pulled my hand away. Don't talk to me as if I were a child. I don't need you to calm me down. I want to know the truth. What is really happening here? The truth about what? His tone changed. He sounded annoyed now. What are you saying about me? About my mother? About what? He was silent for a while. Then he spoke softly. You're making everything more complicated than it is. I just want a normal family. A wife. Children. A house. Is that wrong? Of course not, I said. If it's a sincere wish, but not if it's part of a hidden plan. We didn't speak for the rest of the way. When we got home, David went straight to the shower. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about everything. Something wasn't right. My intuition told me something was fishy, but I couldn't put the puzzle pieces together. I picked up my phone and called Natasha, a friend from school who now worked for the police. Hello, sorry for the late call. Can you do me a favor? I need to check something. Depends, she said seriously. What do you need? I want to know if there are any records or reports on David Becker. Your husband? She said, surprised. Veronica, what's wrong? I really don't know. I just need you to check. Please. All right. Anything else? Yes, his mother, Elena Becker, too. She was silent for a moment. But are you okay? He's not doing anything to you? No, everything's fine. It's just a gut feeling. Something tells me something isn't right. Okay, I'll check, but be careful. Yes, I hung up. Exactly. Then I heard a voice behind me and flinched. Who were you talking to? David was standing in the kitchen doorway, drying his hair with a towel. I decided not to lie. With Natasha. I haven't spoken to her in a long time. At this hour? He looked at his watch. It's almost 11 p.m. She works late. David went to the refrigerator and got a bottle of water. I'm still upset about this afternoon. I'm not upset, I said. I'm just tired of you always hiding things. He sat down across from me, took my hands. Veronica, I love you very much. Maybe I don't always say it the way I should, and don't do everything perfectly. But I want us to be happy. Let's leave the doubts behind and start fresh. I looked him in the eyes. So beautiful. But in that moment, I saw something else. Calculation, coldness, manipulation. Still, part of me wanted to believe him, to believe that the man I had married was sincere. All right, I replied. We'll start over, but this time with complete honesty. Of course, he said, smiling. No secrets. The next morning, when David supposedly went for an interview at a new company, I decided to check the folder I had found in the closet, but to my surprise, it was no longer there. I searched the whole house, but nothing. He had taken it with him. He had certainly noticed that I already suspected something. That evening, Natasha called me. "Veronica, I have information, but not over the phone. We need to meet." We arranged to meet at a cafe near my house. I told David I was meeting with colleagues from work. Natasha was already there, at a table in the back. She was nervously playing with her coffee cup. I sat down across from her. "What did you find out?" I asked immediately. "Veronica, your husband and his mother are not who they pretend to be," she said quietly, leaning towards me. "There are already complaints against David Becker from 2 women, but the cases were closed due to lack of evidence. He was accused of fraud and psychological abuse." I felt as if a bucket of ice-cold water was being poured over me. "Fraud?" I whispered. "Yes, with a similar pattern. He met single women who owned properties, married them, and somehow managed to get the property transferred to his name. They were left penniless, and his mother, Elena Becker, is neither a school principal nor anything similar. Years ago, she had legal problems for forging documents. That was about 15 years ago. Now she officially works as a consultant at a real estate firm." I buried my face in my hands. How could I have been so blind? "Veronica," Natasha said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Are you in danger? Do you want to do something?" "No, physically he hasn't touched me or anything. And the house?" "The house is mine, Natasha. It's all mine. I lied to them. I told them it belonged to my grandmother." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. "And why that?" "I don't know. It was like a premonition. Something told me I shouldn't trust them completely." "Well, now it seems they want to take it from you through deception. And what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but now that I know the truth, I can at least protect myself." When I got home, David and Elena Becker were talking quietly in the kitchen, but as soon as they saw me, they fell silent. "Veronica, you're home early," David said with a tense smile. "Mom stopped by for tea," he added casually. "Hello, Elena Becker," I greeted, pretending everything was normal. "Hello, darling. How was it with your colleagues?" "Very informative," I replied, looking at them both with new eyes. "I learned a lot of interesting things." She set her cup on the table and looked at me attentively. "Oh?" "For example, about the new laws and important details in registering properties," I said, smiling. I saw how they both looked at each other tensely. "I didn't know you were interested in such things," she remarked, forcing a smile. "Not before, but now I find it important, especially with the family I have." David came closer and put an arm around my shoulders. "We were talking with my mother about what we could do this weekend. How about we get out of town? You and me. A break from everything, just the 2 of us." It was so obvious he wanted to change the subject that I almost had to laugh out loud. "Sounds tempting," I said, "but I already have other plans. I want to visit my grandmother." They looked at each other again. Elena Becker leaned forward slightly. "Your grandmother? The owner of this house?" "Exactly," I replied with an innocent smile. "I haven't seen her in a long time. I want to tell her about the wedding, show her photos." I turned to David. "Do you want to come with me? Then you'll finally meet her." David turned pale. "This weekend I have something important. A meeting with the directors of the new company. I can't postpone that." "What a shame," I replied. "My grandmother wanted to meet you." I saw Elena Becker nervously adjusting the hem of her blouse. "And where does your grandmother live, Veronica? Maybe I could accompany you. I'm part of the family too, right?" "Thank you. That's very kind. But this time I'd rather go alone. My grandmother is a bit sensitive and can't receive many visits." "Sick?" my mother-in-law said, raising her eyebrows. Well, she's already 84 years old. Age-related. Sometimes she has memory problems, although she's still very particular about her things. She reads all the papers, even the utility bills. Elena Becker's face fell, and David started coughing, as if he were uncomfortable. Well, give her our regards, my mother-in-law said, standing up. It's already late. I think I'll go. When she had left, David tried to hug me, but I pulled away. What's wrong with you? He asked, frowning. You're very strange today. I'm not strange, I said, collecting the cups. I've just been thinking a lot lately. Thinking about what? About everything. Our life, our marriage. He sat on the edge of the table with his arms crossed. And what conclusion did you come to? I looked him straight in the eyes. Tell me one thing, Dave. Were you ever married before? The question caught him off guard. He blinked several times and then laughed nervously. Of course not. Why do you ask? I don't know. I just wanted to know. It's strange knowing nothing about your past. No girlfriends, no family, except your mother. I hardly know anything about your past either. I also know almost nothing about my father, he said. He left us when I was 5 years old. Yes, I remember you saying that. And what's his name? What's his last name? Is he still alive? Where does he live now? David stood up, annoyed. And what does that matter? He disappeared from our lives and I don't want to talk about him. What's wrong with you, Veronica? Nothing special. I just want to understand the man I married better. I noticed how nervous he was and how he tried to avoid direct answers. And then I understood. Natasha was right. This man is not who he pretends to be. He's hiding things, but I decided not to pressure him. Let it go, I said with a calm smile. You have that interview tomorrow. You should get some sleep. He breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, you're right. Let's go to sleep. You go. I'm going to work a little more, I told him. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I heard David's breath as he slept, and I couldn't stop asking myself questions. How could I not have noticed this earlier? I married a con artist. What should I do now? Should I confront him and his mother, or should I wait for the best moment to act? The next morning, David went to his interview. I took the day off and went straight to the notary. All the house papers with me. I had to make sure they hadn't made any strange moves with the property. The notary, an elderly gentleman, checked all the documents carefully. Everything is in order, he finally said. The house belongs entirely to you. There are no mortgages or liens. And could I check if someone has requested copies or extracts of my documents? I asked. He rubbed his chin. We have no records of that here, but if you suspect fraud, I recommend you go to the county recorder's office. There you can request a report on all recent actions regarding your property. I thanked him and went straight there. I requested the complete history of movements on my house for the last 6 months. I was told the report would be ready in 5 business days. On the way back home, I visited Natasha. She was just getting off duty and invited me in for tea. And what are you planning to do? She asked, as we sat in her kitchen. For now, I'm just observing, I said. I want to gather as much information as possible. First, I need to understand their plan before I make my move. And what if they beat you to it? Or believe the house belongs to a grandmother who doesn't actually exist? Without evidence, they can't do anything legally. Natasha stirred her tea thoughtfully. Be careful. If they realize you suspect something, who knows how they'll react. I'll be careful, but I can't stay idle and wait for them to come up with another plan. And what is your plan? Find out everything. I want to know exactly who David is and who his mother really is. Find these women he was with before, I said. I want to know exactly how he proceeded with each one of them. Then I'll teach them a lesson they won't forget." "That sounds risky," Natasha said, shaking her head. "Maybe it would be easier to just get a divorce and let him go. After all, he'll surely just find another victim." I put my hand on the table. "No, Natasha. I want him to pay for what he's done, for them to learn it the hard way." "Then I'll help you," she replied confidently. "I have access to some databases. We'll find these women." When I got home, David wasn't back yet. I decided to take the opportunity to search the entire house for all the documents he was surely hiding. I searched all the closets, drawers, even behind the pictures. I looked under the mattress. Nothing. Either he had already taken them with him, or he had hidden them too well. Already desperate, I checked his work bag, which he almost always carried with him. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. It was open. Inside was the usual: a laptop, a notebook, pens, his phone charger. I opened the notebook. There were notes from meetings, phone numbers, unimportant things, nothing strange. But then I saw a small side pocket on the bag. I reached in and felt something hard, like a USB drive. And yes, it was a small black USB drive with no labels or markings. I hesitated for a second, but I plugged it into my computer. It had several folders with harmless names: work, photos, documents. In the work folder were files from our company, contracts, presentations, spreadsheets. In photos, I saw pictures from events David had attended, and even some where we were together. Nothing unusual, but when I opened the documents folder, I felt my heart would jump out of my chest. There were scans of passports, marriage certificates, property deeds, wills, gift deeds, and in many of them, I recognized David, although he looked slightly different. In some, he had a different hairstyle, in others a beard or mustache, but the most shocking part was that the names were different. David Becker, David Sokolov, David Gromov, as if he changed his identity like someone changes their shirt. I kept checking file by file, and a terrible picture formed in my head. David sought out women with property, married them, and then managed to keep their assets. Sometimes he did it with wills, sometimes with gifts, in other cases with purchase agreements, and then he disappeared. He left them penniless. He had even saved photos of these women on the drive. They were women of different ages and appearances, but they all had something in common. You could see the loneliness and trust in their eyes. I felt a lump form in my throat, and I felt sick. Really? Is that how I looked to him? He also thought I was easy prey. Among the files, I found something that made me go ice cold. A blueprint of my house with notes and everything. It said approximate value $800,000 in the grandmother's name. We must do it through a gift deed. He had even written down the plan step by step: wedding, gain her trust, convince her to make the donation, sell the house. Next target, an apartment downtown. I barely had time to copy all the files to my computer and put the drive back in its place when I heard the door open. David had arrived. "Hello, my love," he said, entering the kitchen, where I was pretending to cook. "How was your day today?" I asked him, trying to sound normal. "Excellent," he said excitedly. "They are happy with me. They offered me an even higher salary than I expected. I start on Monday." He came from behind and hugged me around the waist. "Congratulations," I smiled, although inside I felt pure rage. "We have to celebrate this," he said. "I've already reserved a table for tomorrow at a restaurant, and my mother is coming with us. And of course, how could we do anything without her?" I said, with sarcasm I couldn't hide. He frowned. "Are you upset with my mother again?" "No, everything's fine. I'm just tired. We should really take a break this weekend. Just you and me." He smiled. "That sounds great. We can go to a place I know outside the city. It's very quiet." "Yes, of course you know it," I thought. "You probably worked something out there with one of your other victims." "Sounds good," I replied. "But first, dinner." I've cooked your favorite dish." That night, I played the perfect wife. But every time he touched me, I wanted to pull away. How could I not have noticed this earlier? How could I not have noticed the falseness of his words, his caresses? How could I have believed that he loved me? The next day I met with Natasha. She was sitting in her car 2 blocks from my house. "Here it is," I said, handing her the drive with the files. "Everything I found. He's a professional con artist." Natasha. "And it seems I am neither the first nor the last." She checked several files and whistled in surprise. "Wow, he really knew what he was doing. I've found contacts for women who have already reported him. One has agreed to meet with us today. Let's go together." "Sure. And what about your husband?" "He thinks I'm at work, and tonight we're going to dinner with his mother to celebrate his new job." Natasha shook her head. "This is very dangerous. Veronica, if I were you, I would give up everything, file for divorce, and let him find another victim." "No," I said firmly. "Ideologist want him to pay for everything." We met with Anna, one of his ex-wives, in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city. She was a tall, slim woman around 40, with tired eyes and nervous movements. You could tell she hadn't had a good time. She flinched when I showed her David's photo. "Yes, that's him," she said quietly. Back then I knew him by his full name, David Smith. He used to have a beard. "Tell me what happened," I asked her. She sighed, picked up her coffee cup, and began to speak. "We met in an English class. He was very attentive, very loving. He said he wanted to start a family, have children, and I was alone after my divorce. I had an apartment downtown that my parents had left me. We were together for about 3 months. Then he proposed to me. The story sounded all too familiar. I nodded for her to continue. After we got married, he insisted that we sell the apartment and buy a house outside the city. He said it was better for the children. Fresh air, more space." "And you agreed?" I asked. "Yes. We found a house. We made a down payment." Then he asked me to sign the papers for the sale of my apartment, but something made me hesitate. I decided to check everything calmly. I showed the documents to a lawyer friend, and it turned out it wasn't just a sales contract. There was a clause stating that all the money would go to an account in David's name. "And what did you do?" I asked her. "Well, the obvious. I refused to sign. I made a scene, and the next day he disappeared. He took all his things, and I never heard from him again." "Did you report him?" "Yes, I went to the police. But they said there wasn't enough evidence of fraud. Since he hadn't gotten my money, they couldn't do anything. And his mother. Did you meet her?" Anna nodded. "Yes, Elena Becker. She always meddled in our relationship, gave advice, criticized everything. She was the one who found that house outside the city. She said it was an investment, but now I know they were working together." "Family business," Natasha said, as if closing the case. Anna finished her coffee and said, "After he disappeared, I hired a private detective. He found out that David had done this before. He had taken properties from at least 2 women before me, but they could never prove anything." "And are you willing to testify now?" I asked. Anna shook her head. "I just want to forget all this. I was lucky I didn't lose my apartment. I don't want to relive this nightmare. I didn't press." I understood her. After meeting Anna, Natasha and I went to her office. There she showed me an open case of another woman, Marina Baxter. "The pattern is always the same," Natasha said, leafing through the documents. "They meet. The relationship develops very quickly. Then the wedding. And then he tries to keep a property, a house, an apartment. The only difference is the method. Sometimes they use sales contracts, sometimes gift deeds, or even wills. But the result is always the same. The woman is left without her property, and the husband disappears, along with his mother. And so far, no one has held them accountable. They proceed cautiously, never doing anything that looks like direct fraud. If the woman starts to suspect something, They just disappear and look for another victim. They always cover their tracks, change names, numbers, phone numbers, addresses. But I have evidence, Natasha said, pointing to the USB drive. Here I have a whole file on their tricks. Maybe that's still not enough, she sighed. We have to catch them in the act, so they have no chance of getting away scot-free. We talked about the plan for hours. By the afternoon, we had an idea. It was risky, but it could work. I decided to set a trap for them, to give them exactly what they wanted, but on my terms. That same evening, we met at a restaurant as planned. Elena Becker was very excited. She talked about David's great career opportunities and the beautiful future that awaited us. I smiled and nodded, pretending to be the innocent and trusting wife. And how is your grandmother, Veronica? Elena suddenly asked casually. Did you visit her over the weekend? No, I couldn't, I replied, but we talked on the phone. She wasn't doing very well. Oh, what a shame, Elena said, feigning concern. Maybe she needs someone to visit her, don't you think? Right now, she needs rest. The doctor has ordered her on absolute bed rest. The doctor, David repeated. What does she have? Well, she's old, I replied, shrugging. It's already hard for her to manage everything alone. She even told me she's thinking about putting the house in my name, while she still can. David and his mother looked at each other. I saw their eyes light up, as if thinking about new easy prey. That's a very sensible decision, Elena said softly. At her age, one must settle everything properly. I don't think it's the right time to talk about this, David interrupted. Better for your grandmother to recover first. But this is an important matter, my son, his mother said. We have to think about the future. Even your grandmother will feel more comfortable when everything is in order. You're right, Elena Becker, I said, nodding. I just wanted to discuss it with you first. The grandmother insists on doing it soon. She says she wants to settle everything officially. I think that's excellent. She almost jumped for joy in her chair. I have a notary friend who can help us. He could even come to your grandmother's house if it's difficult for her to move. Yes, that would be very helpful, I replied. And of course, darling, I'll take care of organizing everything, she said, all excited. When do you want to go? I think this weekend, I replied. Perfect, David. Of course you'll go with her, right, my son? He nodded, trying not to show his excitement. Sure. Then I'll finally meet your grandmother, he said, smiling. She will be happy, I replied, smiling as well. But inwardly, I knew they had taken the bait. There's just one detail, I added. My grandmother is very traditional and very stubborn. She only wants to put the house in my name. She says the property must only be passed down in the female line. Elena Becker's face changed instantly. That's strange, she said. But you're already with David. You are a family. Maybe you could talk to her, explain it to her. I already tried, but you know how the elderly are. She's determined. Mother and son looked at each other. I could see them rethinking their strategy. Well then, Elena Becker finally said, the most important thing is that the house stays in the family. We'll see how we manage that. Yes, of course, I thought, drinking my wine. Just not the way you think. They spent the rest of the evening discussing the details of the trip. I watched them making plans, without the slightest idea that I already knew the whole truth about their intentions. I even enjoyed seeing how excited they were, how their poorly veiled greed was showing. When we got home, David was particularly friendly. He tucked me into bed, massaged my shoulders, and told me how happy he was with me. And there I lay, next to the man I once thought I loved, and the only thing I felt now was disgust. The next day, I called Natasha and told her the whole plan. Are you sure this is a good idea? She asked me. This could be dangerous. I have everything under control, I assured her. The most important thing is that you and your people are there at the exact right moment. Yes, of course, we'll be there, she replied. But I'm still worried. These guys are professional con artists. Could they suspect something? They are so obsessed with getting the house that they won't notice the details, I said confidently. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I spent the next 2 days preparing the trap. I hired a retired actress to play the role of my grandmother. I arranged everything with a real notary, and Natasha organized a team of police officers who would be present during the signing of the documents. When the weekend came, the plan was ready. I told David that we were driving to my grandmother's house on the outskirts of the city, but in reality, we drove to a house rented just for that day, where the grandmother and the notary were already waiting for us. And just as we had imagined, Elena Becker insisted on accompanying us. She came with her notary, a short, fat, bald man with sweaty hands and eyes that constantly darted in all directions. As soon as I saw him, I knew he was an actor, a guy who was just there for show. "This is Victor Snyder," Elena Becker introduced him, "a very experienced lawyer. He will help us with all the formalities." We arrived at the house by car. It was a small one-story cottage, surrounded by plants and flowers, very fitting for an elderly lady. "What a beautiful house," Elena Becker said, acting tenderly as she looked around, "although it needs a few repairs. It must be hard for the grandmother to take care of it alone." "She manages," I replied, opening the door with my key. Inside, the grandmother was already waiting for us. In reality, it was the actress Nina Miller, whom I had found at a theater school. She played her role perfectly. Gray hair, slightly bent over, with a stern look under her glasses. Very convincing. "Veronica, my treasure," she said, spreading her arms. "You're finally here." I hugged her and whispered in her ear. "Everything is ready." She just nodded imperceptibly. "Grandmother, look. This is my husband, David, and this is his mother, Elena Becker." "Pleased to meet you," she said with a small smile, while eyeing them suspiciously from head to toe. "Come in, we'll have some tea." "And who is this?" she asked, pointing to the fake notary. "This is Victor Snyder, a lawyer," Elena Becker said quickly. "We thought he could help with the documents you wanted to sign." "Ah, the documents," Nina Miller said, squinting her eyes mischievously. "Well, I also invited my notary. He's waiting for us in the living room." And yes, when we entered the dining room, the real notary, Igor Smith, was sitting there, and with him, another gentleman in a suit. It was an undercover police officer who had come with Natasha. Elena Becker frowned. "And why are there two notaries?" "To be sure," the grandmother replied quite calmly. "This is a very important matter. Please sit down. We will review the papers." We all sat down around the table. Igor Smith took out a folder with the documents. "We are here to sign the donation of this house at the address known to you." "One moment," Elena Becker interrupted. "How about we have some tea first? We can discuss everything calmly." "There will be time for tea later," the grandmother interrupted firmly. "First things first, I have made my decision. I want to leave the house to my granddaughter. She is the only one who takes care of me, the only one who has been there for me." David seemed very tense. He uncomfortably wiped his sweaty hands on his pants. He already saw that things were not going as he wanted. "And what about the husband?" The fake notary Victor interjected. "Wouldn't it be better to leave the house to both of them?" No, the grandmother said, shaking her head. "The house is only for my granddaughter. No one else in my family. That's just how it is. The property always passes down in the female line." Elena Becker wanted to say something, but just then, the doorbell rang. I went to the door, already knowing who it was. It was Natasha in her police uniform, along with two colleagues. "Good evening," she said in a formal tone. "We have information about a possible fraud attempt related to this address." They entered the dining room. As soon as the officers crossed the threshold, there was complete silence. David turned chalk white, and Elena Becker clutched her purse so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "What's going on here?" David shouted. I stood in the middle of the room and said with all the calm in the world, "When I got married, I told neither my husband nor my mother-in-law that this house belonged to me. And it's good that I didn't, because hardly were we married, my mother-in-law came to me with a very serious proposal. According to my story, I told them this house belonged to my grandmother, and she had allowed me to live here. At first, they said nothing. But then my mother-in-law pulled out a document and said to me, 'Your grandmother is already old. She can no longer take care of the house. You should have her sign a paper to transfer it. After all, you will keep it.' Honestly, I almost laughed in her face. David turned red with anger and fear at the same time. 'What are you saying?' 'That's a lie!' he shouted. I looked him straight in the eyes and continued speaking. 'And lies? Look, here I have a USB drive. On it is all the information about your previous victims, David. Or is your name Smith or Gromov? Elena Becker stood up abruptly. This is slander. We're leaving immediately. I'm sorry, Natasha said, standing in front of the door. You can't leave. We have sufficient grounds to arrest you both for attempted fraud. And I also have statements from your previous victims, I added, and a recording where you talk about how you want to take the house from the grandmother. In that moment, the grandmother stood up, took off her glasses, and said, I can go now. My role is finished. Thank you, Nina Miller, I smiled. You did it perfectly. David finally understood that he was trapped. He ran to the door, but the police officer stopped him before he could flee. He and his mother were led away in handcuffs. Their rights were read to them. When it was all over, Natasha and I were left alone in the living room. I can't believe it all went well, she said, breathing a sigh of relief. Their overconfidence brought them down. I sank into a chair, feeling the exhaustion suddenly wash over me. They were so fixated on finding an easy prey that they didn't see the trap. The trial took place 6 months later. Thanks to all the evidence and the testimonies of the other women who had also been victims, David and his mother received a just punishment for fraud. I got a divorce and started over. The house still belongs to me, as it always has. But now I see it differently. It's the place where I learned a hard lesson about trust and deception. Sometimes I think that maybe I should have just left David when I found everything out. But then I remembered that he would just find another victim, and everything would repeat itself. Now that justice has been served, I regret nothing. The biggest lesson I learned from all this is, trust but verify, and never let others make plans with your life. That's it for today. Please give a like and subscribe to the channel so the stories can continue.